Imagine the world's most powerful superpower, an empire with a massive navy and professional army, getting beaten by a ragtag group of farmers and merchants. It sounds impossible. In the late 1700s, it was impossible, until it happened. This isn't just a story about tea and taxes. It's about a revolution of the mind that changed the course of human history forever. Let me guide you into the story of the American Revolution. For over 70 years, Great Britain didn't really bother to govern its 13 American colonies. This was a policy known as salutary neglect. The colonies were left to run their own affairs through elected legislatures, effectively becoming self-governing before the war even started. Everything changed in 1763. Britain had just won the 7 Years' War against France, but the victory came with a staggering price tag. They were bankrupt, facing a debt of over £130 million. To Parliament, the solution was simple: make the colonists pay for the troops protecting them. The trouble started with the Sugar Act in 1764, and then the Stamp Act in 1765. This was the first direct tax on the colonies, hitting everything from newspapers to decks of cards. The colonists weren't actually mad about the money. The taxes were actually quite low. They were mad about the principle. They had no representatives in the British Parliament, yet Parliament was making laws that affected them. This gave rise to the legendary rallying cry, "No taxation without representation." When Parliament didn't listen and passed the Townshend Acts in 1767, things got violent. In 1770, a mob in Boston harassed British soldiers until the troops panicked and fired, killing 5 civilians. Patriots called it the Boston Massacre. But the real fuse was lit by tea. In 1773, the Sons of Liberty, some disguised as Mohawk Indians, boarded merchant ships and dumped £10,000 worth of tea into Boston Harbor. Britain's response was brutal: the Intolerable Acts. They closed the port of Boston, restricted town meetings, and ended self-government in Massachusetts. They thought they were crushing a rebellion. Instead, they were creating a nation. The revolution wasn't just fought with muskets, it was fought with literature. John Dickinson's Letters from a Farmer in Pennsylvania argued the taxes were unconstitutional. Then, in early 1776, Thomas Paine published Common Sense. It was a massive bestseller that used simple, punchy language to convince ordinary people that monarchy was a scam and independence was the only way forward. By the time Common Sense was being read in taverns, the shooting had already started. On April 19, 1775, British troops marched to Concord to seize weapons, but they were met by Minutemen at Lexington. The shot heard round the world officially began the war. 2 months later, at the Battle of Bunker Hill, the Americans proved they could stand toe-to-toe with the world's best infantry. It was a Pyrrhic victory for the British. They took the hill, but at the cost of over 1,000 casualties. In July 1776, the Second Continental Congress went all in. They adopted the Declaration of Independence, drafted by Thomas Jefferson. It was a revolutionary document that claimed all men are created equal, and that government only exists by the consent of the governed. Britain responded by sending the largest expeditionary force in its history. That summer, 32,000 British and Hessian troops landed in New York. They crushed Washington's army at the Battle of Brooklyn and seized New York City, turning it into their main base for the rest of the war. Washington's army was reduced to fewer than 5,000 hungry, unpaid men, and it looked like the revolution was over. But the Americans had hidden strengths. Women were the backbone of the resistance. They managed farms while men were away, acted as spies, and served as camp followers, nurses, cooks, and even combatants, like Deborah Sampson. Women like Mercy Otis Warren used their pens to attack royal authority, while Abigail Adams pushed for women's rights in the new republic. Then came the turning point: foreign help. After a massive American victory at Saratoga in 1777, France realized the Americans could actually win and signed a formal alliance. Spain and the Dutch Republic eventually joined the fight, turning a colonial rebellion into a global world war that stretched from the Caribbean to India. At the same time, a Prussian officer named Baron von Steuben arrived at the winter camp of Valley Forge and drilled Washington's ragtag militia into a professional fighting machine. The decisive moment came in 1781 at the Battle of Yorktown. British General Cornwallis had moved his army to the Virginia coast, expecting the British Navy to rescue him. But he was trapped. A French fleet under Comte de Grasse defeated the British relief ships, while Washington and the French army under Rochambeau surrounded him on land. Cornwallis surrendered his entire army. This wasn't just a battlefield defeat, it was the collapse of British political will to keep fighting. On September 3, 1783, the Treaty of Paris was signed. Britain formally recognized the United States as an independent nation, ceding almost all territory east of the Mississippi. This mattered because it was the first permanently successful overthrow of monarchical colonial rule in history. It proved that a federal republic based on natural rights and the consent of the governed wasn't just a philosopher's dream, it could actually work. It set off a chain reaction, inspiring the French Revolution, the Haitian Revolution, and independence movements across Latin America. The American Revolution didn't just create a new country, it ended the age of monarchy and started the age of freedom. It wasn't a perfect process. Slavery remained a massive contradiction, and rights were still restricted for many, but it laid a foundation. As Thomas Paine wrote, the Americans had it in their power to begin the world over again. And they did. If you like this presentation, share it with your friends so that they too can learn awesome history. Thank you, and see you in the next episode.